Okay, so today we're going to start chapter 6. And chapter 6 is all about the type of emotional preparation that it's important for us to do in order for the inspiration to stay. In other words, we can use all the skills that we've been using up till now, but the inspiration could leave. However, if we're going to do the emotional preparation, which we're going to learn about today, then the inspiration is going to stay. And we're going to remain inspired. And we're really going to go into the nuances of emotional intelligence and um, how the concept of paradoxic intent, that sometimes when we want to achieve a certain goal, we actually can actively do something else, and automatically as a byproduct that goal is going to be achieved. And in this chapter we're going to learn that actually it's going to be a cascading effect. There's certain things that we can do that are within our power on an emotional level, and that is going to paradoxically have an automatic byproduct of various different cascading emotional events, that the end state of all of this will be inspiration that stays. So let's go. Let's start reading inside. Rabbi Smith, can we bring up the text? Oh, excellent. Okay, we're going to start reading inside. Vihine. Now it's all about emotional intelligence. That's what we're doing now. Vihine. Behold, Yedua, it's known. Hamaimer, the saying. It's in Aramaic. I believe it's from the Zayar. The Bechia Tekia Belibai Besitra Da. Bechia is translated crying. Crying is Tekia means set. In my heart, Mesitra Da from one side. Vechedva Besitra Da. And happiness is on the other side. In other words, a person can have a compound emotion that on the one hand they feel sad, on the other hand there's an element of happiness. How does this work? Liyes, this to be liyes means this is because shetzarech lahakdim. No, liyes, because in order for the mental meditations that we've been learning about, for them to stay, shetzarech lahakdim, first we need to do something. Lahakdim means before. To do something before, v'chinas hachana, a type of preparation, benefesh in the soul, l'chlolos hayidia heliki, to the holistic knowledge of divinity. In other words, before we start even studying divinity, bishtarshulos derin safe, the chain order of events of how the unlimited energy, the Oren Seif, the unlimited light, Babiyah, comes down in the four worlds. Abiyah is the four worlds. Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. Atzilus is God, like revealing His personality, and then Biyah is God's thought, speech, and action, which actually create our world, which actually is the fabric of our world. Bria is the thought of God, Yetzira is the speech of God, and Asiya is the implementation of God. It's the world which we live in. So if we're going to study the chain order of events of how this all works with the intent of inspiration, we need to first prepare emotionally. We have to make our soul a vessel that's ready for their inspiration. And this can only happen, this preparation, Ella only can only happen al yidei through, and so it's based through two things. We need to have a compound emotion in our hearts, the bechia of crying, vechedva, and happiness. Now, later we're going to learn that in nowadays, crying is not the best emotion, because what happens nowadays sometimes people get stuck in one side. So it's actually going to be slightly different, the emotion, the way we're going to practice this in actuality for our generation. This is written in the 1800s. For now, it's going to be more of an emotion of feeling crushed instead of crying. So whenever we say crying, the way we implement it is slightly different for our generation. But however, let's just translate it the way it is. So the bechia, crying, v'chedva, and happiness. Gam shein bes hefchim. Even though these two emotions are two opposites, haribayim ke'echad mamish. A mature person, person will experience both emotions at the same time. Actually, when they actually are aware, when they think about their emotion, it's going to be in one emotion. They're going to be aware that, every emotion has two sides, dafka, specifically with one analysis of, what am I experiencing right now? It's actually both. When a person's aware and they prepare with this mature preparation of being aware that emotions have two sides to them, this actually creates a great preparation in the soul, in order to is to install, in its essence, Mikola Sagas Aprotis, from all the different understandings, all the various understandings, all the detailed understandings, the Ur and Sefer, the unlimited light, the way it comes down Be'abiyah in the four worlds. And when we understand this, it's definitely inspirational. In other words, a person can study this, but it's not going to make any difference to them. They're going to just remain the same person as they were before unless they prepare. And if one of these preparations is missing, the hainu, if we have one emotion without the other, it's like, what's the problem with like bipolar? It's basically a person being too happy in an unrealistic way, or the depressed side is being too sad, and that's a problem. So if there's an emotion, one emotion, extreme emotion, without the other emotion at the same time, that is not healthy. So if we're going to have one emotion without the other, or even if a person imagines that he has both emotions, however, they're not real, it's just an imagination, and it's not deep, it's only surface emotions. Rak derech ma'ivri, if the emotions are only like passing chitzoni in an external way, be'alma, haris a siman gomer, then it's a real sign, it's real evidence, shlenikba b'nafshe klum, that all of this divinity which he's been thinking about hasn't been installed in the soul at all. Rak merachik me'od, only from a great distance divinity is revealed to the person. He feels his spiritual divinity is only being revealed to him from a great distance because he doesn't have deep emotion in these two levels. And so what's the problem? It's not going to be enduring. It's not going to stay. Why? When there's a little bit of something opposite in his life, maybe life happens and a person becomes very busy with something, like in business, or if a person feels himself to be some sort of his ego, he feels himself very much. Then all the divinity that he studied will be disconnected from his heart totally, and it won't make any effect on him. So, and a person who thinks, see, narcissism is a person doesn't have space for somebody else's emotion. They're so busy with their emotions that they don't have space for somebody else. And a person could have temporary narcissism. For example, it's very natural. For example, if a person hits their toe, but for a moment they don't have any emotion, don't have any space in their emotions for anything else because they're in pain. Their pain fills up all their emotions. So, and this is a person feels themselves. they have like a low self-esteem, so they compensate by thinking, by making, or that they are something which they're not, to compensate for their lowly feeling. And it can happen, and everybody has this a little bit, yeah. So, or if somebody becomes really busy, so all these things that happen will make the divinity and all the work that we've been doing all till now to all disappear. So it's really important that we do the preparation. So now let's explain how it works. Let's explain. We know we need to prepare emotionally. What is this? So let's explain these. We're going to explain these things. In Yedua, it's known the Einig v'Simcha, pleasure and happiness, hu b'chachma ubina. They dwell in the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain. The right side of the brain is chachma, which is insight, the flash of a new idea. Ubina is the detailed understanding, the left side of the brain. Pleasure dwells in the right side of the brain, and happiness dwells in the left side of the brain. Ha'oinig b'chachma, because pleasure is in chachma and insight. V'simcha b'bina, and happiness is in the left side of the brain. So obviously, I mean, the pursuit of happiness is the ability to be able to practice your religion. But if you really want to understand what happiness is in its deepest way, it's getting the left side of the brain to be used to its fullest. Unfortunately, when people are using the modern technology and they're only using surface level of their brain, so they don't really get a chance. They're practicing not to use the deepest aspects of the left side of the brain, and therefore they will be missing happiness. And then they will be looking for all these distractions to try and fill the emptiness they feel in their heart, because they're not using their potential of using the left side of the brain. Because ultimately, happiness, you have to trigger the left side of the brain to the utmost potential in order to experience the real human potential for happiness. And now, and the emotional difference between experiencing the Sabbath or a Yom Tov. We just had the Yom Tov of Shavuos. That's the difference. On Shabbos, the emotion which we have access to is Eineg, is pleasure. But Simcha is the emotion which is revealed on Yom Tov, on one of the three festivals. Let's go on. Ki asaga b'seichel molid hasimcha, because understanding with the intellect gives birth to happiness. Like Viktor Frankl says, you can't, if you make happiness a goal, you'll never be able to attain it. You have to do something else, and that something else, the automatic byproduct will be happiness. He says, take responsibility. He says, just like we have a Statue of Liberty on the East Coast, we need a Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast. Then that helps us to understand something over here, which he's saying, that understanding in the inner intellect gives birth to happiness. So don't focus on the happiness, focus on understanding. Which is this is the happiness of the soul. You have different levels of happiness, but happiness of the soul comes from understanding. Actually, it's written in a verse. The mother of the children is happy. Mother is a code for the left brain, for bina. The mother is happy because that's where happiness is inside humans. Now it's known that main happiness is specifically in understanding divinity. In other words, there's many things we can be happy from, but the main core potential of human happiness is the study of divinity. This is really important. It has to go out to 7 billion people. Need to know this. They want to be truly happy. They need to really, really happy, they need to understand divinity. It has to be with their left brain. It has to be it has to take work. It says, it says in the future, people will be happy. All of humanity will be happy in you. Happy in you. In you means God Almighty. Why? Why will they be happy? Because they're going to understand divinity. That's what people are going to be doing. All of humans. And according to what we've just explained, the Basaga Leis Machshava Tvisa Bay, that the truth is, we've been saying all along, 1 second, the left brain is limited. With understanding, we can never grasp God. Divinity is unlimited. We can never grasp God with understanding. We spoke about the two sides of the coin. We can only understand the created, not the creator. Adarabba, on the contrary, mufla ba'plas erech hanivdal. We were saying last week that it's mufla is like the word pella, or wonder, the opposite of elephant, right? Because in Hebrew, elephant is a pill, a wondrous animal, right? So it's always going to be a wonder. Trying to understand divinity is always going to be mufla b'haflas erech hanivdal. It's going to be a wonder with we're going to we were saying last week that there's the created and there's the concrete, which we can understand with our left brain, and then there's the creator, is much more wondrous and separated from what we understand. The more we understand, the more we realize that the intangible, which always brings the tangible into existence, is wondrous, and the more we understand it, we realize how beyond understanding how separated the infinity really is. And we said that you can maybe relate to it because we have a divine soul. So with our right brain, for a moment, for a flash, we can understand the way it really is. It's like the power of some sort of definition. We're not really sure what. That's kayachma, the power of what. Chachma in Hebrew is spelled as the same word as kayachma, the power of what. The chachma behelam, and it is hidden. Vim kain, and therefore, according to this logic, it's opposite of what we are thinking. When we're happy, we cannot be happy in the essence of God. It's impossible to be happy in muhusa, in his essence. So what does it mean they're going to be happy in you? It's not possible to be happy in his essence. We can only understand the creation. Only the concrete we can understand without brains. Because once you understand, you can never understand his real self, because if you understand it already, it's not him. You can never understand his essence. We can only understand when he sort of focuses himself to create the created, and that we can understand, not his essence. And really only with the right brain, with our insight, we could sort of grasp for a moment, a flash, the intangible. The ayin is intangible, abstract. That's what the right brain does. Shamra simcha. And since only the right brain can grasp him for a moment, with intuition, that's where the happiness should be, in the right brain, because it's grasping the real thing. Like it says in the verse, in the future they will be happy in you. And this logic, what we just said, we know that's not true. Like it's known. Because in the right brain, the habitul, we have bittul. Bittul, we explained last week, is the idea of humility. And it also is the source, bittul, vitality. It's a source of vitality. And it is extremely vital for our existence to have these moments of chachma. And bittul, this humility, hepach hasimcha, is actually the opposite of simcha, b'chachma, dafka. And not this nullification, this humility is specifically in the right brain. Happiness is in the left brain. So we don't understand what it says that they're going to be happy in divinity. We don't understand that because it should be in the right brain, but the right brain we only get the humility. Vasimcha bevina, and happiness is in the left brain. So how do we answer all this? And basically, the point is that these states are all related. It's like very similar to the idea of Viktor Frankl says. Once you cannot directly reach your goal, but you can do something that's going to cause that to happen, that's going to cause something else to happen. So that's what he's about to say. The way the whole thing works is like this. It's known. In everything there is an opposite. Even when something is revealed to the opposite, the fact that this emotion has a certain energy, that's only because it's powered by the opposite. Mamish. It's an equal scale. According to the opposite emotion, that's how it's balanced out and it expresses itself in the different emotion, mamish. And mamish means this is really how it works. This is really the way it is. And therefore both emotions are really two sides of the scale. Is giving you an example. When there's pleasure, obviously there's pain. Well, according to how much pleasure somebody has, bedavar and something, davar mind something, that's how much a person's going to be moved by pain when he's missing that pleasure. In other words, you don't know how much you enjoy breathing till you're missing air. When you're missing air, you're going to feel emotion and you're going to feel pain, and then you're going to know how much pleasurable it's for you is breathing. And so too with many other things that we have in life, that when we're missing them, we realize how much we actually take pleasure in them. So that means that the pain in not having air and the pleasure in having air, this is all really one emotion or two sides of one scale. If somebody stands against you to stop the pleasure, to cause the opposite of the pleasure, that's how much you know you like it. And similarly, the opposite, when you measure up, you cannot measure the pleasure of anything. Rak lo yukar, it will not be recognizable. Rak only according to the pain when you're missing that thing. So you actually and quantify how much do you enjoy this? 1 to 10. How much do you enjoy it? 1 to 10. 10 is a lot. 1 is very little. 5 is in the middle. But if you want to really measure, is when you don't have this thing, how much does it give you pain? And that really is the scale and measure how much you enjoy it. And really, this is all one power. Pleasure and pain is all one. It's all one thing. Who mamish? It really is one thing. It's divided into two paths. Shavim that are equal. Mamish. Shekulin is like in Yiddish you say Schmidt on German, and in English you're going to say a Smith. So let's just take that word shakul and we're going to say scale. They're equally scaled. These two emotions are equally scaled. That one will not, even like a little line on top of the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, a yud, they're not going to separate from each other, even that little. And now he's speaking about the emotions that we started off speaking about in the Zohar, chedva, which is this deep happiness, and crying, shelefi erech hachedva, according to the amount of happiness, shua eineg, which is really, it's a deep happiness, so it's really, it expresses itself as pleasure. Shemurgesh bilti, shemurgesh bebilti bevgilei lakus vasagosei canal. The amount of a person has pleasure in the revelation of divinity when he understands it, when he understands the fabric of the world, and through that he gets an appreciation in the Creator. So too, the second side of the scale is going to come out from it, and from the energy in the pleasure, dafka, specifically from the energy in the pleasure, shua bechia, which is the crying, al heder gilu yair, when the soul is missing the light, benafshe, in his soul. Mitzad hester elkus, because he has a concealment of divinity. And the thing is, once a person experienced divinity, then he realized that without that experience, his life is not a life. Hashemayis b'chayav mamish, until he really doesn't enjoy his life. Right? I mean, I can give you an example. If a person's a musician and he developed the music talent from childhood, and suddenly now he has to become a farmer, which is not a bad thing, but he becomes a farmer with the old technology, and he has to go after an ox or after a cow and make and put seeds into the ground. So he feels like he's missing something because he's not really bringing out his potential. So once a person experiences divinity, experiences full human potential, so when he's missing from that Shemayas b'chayev, he does, life is not life. The more a person tastes the pleasure in divinity with greater happiness, the more bitter he's going to be in his soul when he has the opposite, when he doesn't have it. Oh, so here's the other side of it. It's also the opposite. When you're unhappy and he has a deep bitterness and he cries, and he's not happy with his life, hagashmim, his physical life, he realizes there's something more to life than just physical life. Nikar erech kayach ha'eneg. That's how much you can see how spiritual the person is. The power of pleasure, v'achedva, and happiness, deep happiness, belukus, and divinity. You can see how powerful it is from his unhappiness. Because both of these two parts are very, very equal. B'shava, they're really, really equal. Canal, like we mentioned. Which means an unhappiness on one side of the heart, and a happiness, a deep happiness on the other side of the heart. The shokol echad, they're both in one shokol scale, b'shava mamish, really equal. He's saying it again in order to emphasize. Now now we're really speaking on the level of bina, and now we're going to go. This is what happens in the left brain. So in the left brain, you have these two, this equal scale of emotion. But the same thing happens on a higher level on the right brain. But so to higher than this, with a great pleasure in the right brain. You see what happens when people take drugs. There's a limit. There's a liquid around the brain which is called kayach hamaskil, the power that allows a person to think. It's a liquid. Originally, we used to think that it was only from research that it's only to cushion the brain. You know, when a person like moves the head around, it cushions the brain. But really, they actually discovered that it actually helps a person to think. There's something inside that liquid which allows the brain to come up with greater ideas as it seeps through the brain. And so according to Kabbalah, so when people take these certain um, um, drugs, they're sort of manipulating the pleasure, the natural pleasures which the brain is designed to be able to experience. However, the soul knows that these pleasures should only be triggered through hard work when the soul is achieving its mission in the world. So when a person's achieving their mission in the world and through hard work, there's natural rewards which God put into the system that a person is supposed to experience. So if you try to experience the pleasure without doing the work for what you came to this world for, so the soul becomes unhappy and it wants to leave. And that's why when people take drugs, slowly, it looks like their life is like leaving from them, because they're not doing their job. They're trying to get you're trying to get a back door to the pleasure without actually doing the work. So, but this person, what we're speaking about now is we're ready to do the work. We're just doing the emotional preparation. And we're trying to understand what happens in the right brain, that the pleasure in the right brain, which is naturally, which is in the chachma, in the inside, and when that pleasure is triggered, then a person becomes, his whole essence becomes humble. In Yiddish helps us to understand a little better what's happening. To trogen gar von sich, he's like totally moved from himself. He's not really, at that moment, is not self-aware, but in a good way. From the deep pleasure which is hidden in his essence. And it triggers the opposite emotion. We're speaking about humility and pleasure. The opposite of that is u'inyan hashlachas nafshe mineged mikol davar menaged. He will throw his soul from in front of him whenever he's faced with any hamanaged, with any opponent, lezeh, that is opposing this divine revelation. Shehu nichlal bebechinas hargasish atzmei. He's even going to throw away his own ego, because his own ego is now blocking him from divinity. So he's going to say, I don't care about my own ego. He's going to throw it away. So it's like a fire. So on the one hand, he's feeling a pleasure. So on one hand, he's feeling pleasure. On the other hand, he feels a fire, that anything that's opposing to this pleasure needs to be thrown away, including my ego if I need to. He's going to hate his animalistic life with total humility, hamiti, total, real, deep nullification and humility. What do I want in the heavens? I don't want anything. He doesn't even want spiritual pleasures. He only wants God himself. His whole life, his soul is like burning up only to be connected to God. He doesn't want all these spiritual levels. He doesn't care about spiritual levels. He only wants the original source. Because these two emotions, deep pleasure and the willingness to put his life aside, they're totally equal and they're on the same scale. Now, we spoke about on the level of Bina, we spoke about the scale on the level of the insight of Chachma. There's a one that's higher than this. Hu abba meheder hasaga machmas etzem afla v'avdalas erech mipnei shelo yachilu kli meichel. There's one level. It's not the left brain. It's not the right brain. It's comes from the recognizing that he's lacking in understanding because the actual subject is wondrous and is totally separated from him. The reason is because his vessel of his brain does not have the megabytes to be able to comprehend. That's Kli Mocha. His physical brain does not have the wiring to be able to get this. To get this. Kamei Zalgul Einav Demois de Rabbi Akiva. This actually, there's an example of this, that Rabbi Akiva, who was a great rabbi, he was one of the rabbis through which the chain of the entire Torah went through. In other words, what we know today came through Rabbi Akiva. We have 40 generations of rabbis that they were the central links in the chain of the Torah being given down till the end of the Talmud. Rabbi Akiva was one of them. So even Rabbi Akiva was like Moses, right? So even Rabbi Akiva, his eyes became filled with tears. Mercedes Amukas, from the deep hidden secrets. Now, not all the rabbis were taught the hidden Torah. Only special people, of course, the leader of the generation was one of those peoples, and Rabbi Akiva was. Mercedes Amukas, in deep secrets, Shloyachil Hakli, and he recognized that his physical brain cannot handle, does not have the ability to physically handle this information. Fu bechinas hefle the stima the kol stinin. What he was referring to, what he couldn't understand, is the wonder of a level in Kabbalah which is called stima the kol stima. It's hidden from all levels that are hidden. It's like double hidden. That even from the hidden levels of divinity, it's hidden from that as well. The Hainu Atzmos and Sefer, which level is this? This is speaking about the essence of the unlimited light, Mamish itself. Asher Bilti Musa Klal, it's totally not understandable with brains. Adraba, on the contrary, what happens is Kol Sheyamik Yeser Yifle. The more a person tries to delve into it and understand it deeply, the more he realizes it's totally infinite beyond him. In other words, the more you know that you don't know. The more you know that you don't know. You see, the more you know that you don't know, that's humility. But the emotion that he experienced is that his heart is like worried. You know, when you have like curiosity, and you're really curious, you want to understand something, you want to get this new piece of information, but it's not possible. So you feel an emotion. So the emotion that he describes over here is that the heart is like crying, is worrying and crying. And you know why a person can have that experience that this is inaccessible and it's a problem that this information is inaccessible? That's because he has a deep pleasure, vatshuka, and desire, lahasik, to understand, but he won't be able to. The Yedua, and this emotion, it's known that this emotion, zehu ikar bechinas hakli lebechinas hachachma. This emotion actually will allow a person to jump and do the impossible. That is the main vessel to insight. Whereas in the Reis and the secrets of the Torah, when you know you can't do it and it bothers you, so sometimes God will bring you to a place where you're not able to do. As explained in another place. So in other words, why do we need to give secrets? You know, secrets are not a good thing. Now they say everything. People are exposed to a lot of information. And how do you know the information is real? Well, one thing you don't want to be doing is following secrets, because you can all go down into, everything should be just open source. You'll get a more accurate information by only revealed information. So secrets are not a good thing. But over here, secrets are a good thing, because it's not possible. Even if we would say the secret directly to you, you still wouldn't get it, because your brain is not able to comprehend it. You're just getting words. So only when a person feels that they're missing something and it bothers them, that's what makes a person, gives the person that he'll be able to grasp the secrets. It says in another place, we do not teach the secrets of the Torah, we do not pass them. Only to a person whose heart worries inside of him. In other words, if the student has to want, because it's going to be beyond what the student can grasp, but only because the student can want, will be able to reach which is humanly unattainable. But when a person does understand the essence of God, that's when he's going to experience happiness in the essence of God, even though it's impossible. But when a person really tries, so Hashem will make the impossible attainable to him, even if he doesn't have the hardware of the brain for it. Now, and even though the experience of happiness, 1 second, it's a revelation of pleasure. Pleasure from the right brain comes into the left brain. Pleasure in divinity, and it's tangible. It's a tangible emotion. Aval shershe. So here's the thing. Even though, you see, all these states are related. So when you get one, you sort of get the others. Aval shershe be'emes ba'atzmus hatainu, because the source of this emotion that you feel of happiness is really, since the states are all related, it's really rooted in the essence of the pleasure which is hidden. And the way it expressed itself, the way it appears is the opposite. It can appear in the crying when something's lacking. Shu haflav avdallah, which is the experience that the divinity is beyond and it's separated from the person. I cannot grasp it. Canal, like we've been explaining, because these two ends of the scale are equal, but we're saying there's a few scales over here, and all of these scales are connected. They're all equal. In other words, when you press on one end of the scale, on the third scale, it also presses something in the first scale. According to the measure of the power of the great, mighty, the geidel and greatness of the pleasure, which a person has in the essence, dafka, specifically in the essence of God, whatever he was able to understand. So you will also find the opposite, which is a deep crying, when he feels his brain is not able to handle the hasik, to be able to grasp kanal vada, like we've mentioned, and this is enough for the person who understands. So now we're going to realize that there's actually 3 levels in this multiple, these 3 scales. There's 3 levels in this experience. This is the order of the steps. Whenever we experience something and its opposite.
Rabbi Cherik, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to remind you, you had asked that you wanted to bring in ice tests from the Vata Tetzaveh Mimer of the Rebbe. Is that something you want to do tonight? I have it if you need it.
Yeah, so we can mention the 3 levels over here, and then we're going to be able to understand those level in the Maimer of the Rebbe, when the Rebbe teaches us in his last discourse. So we have to understand when the Rebbe gives the last Hasidic discourse or the first Hasidic discourse, it's a message for life. It's like the main message which we need to be focusing on and is hidden over there. So by reading what we're about to read now, we're going to be able to understand that message. But let's read it inside here, and that's going to help us over there. Let's do it. There are three levels. The orders of the steps are like this: a deep happiness and an open happiness. Begilui ereliki, when the divine light is revealed. Hamusag mamish, when it's understood. So when you understand divinity, the understanding helps that the light is actually revealed. Vipucha yates, and the opposite. This is left brain, right? Bechia behester haminagazet, crying when it's covered up, which is the opposite of the happiness. First level, first scale. V'lemaylam is that second scale, higher than this. Bechinas ha'oineg bechedba, pleasure and deep happiness. Pleasure and deep happiness, which is the right brain. Hanelam b'kachma, which is hidden in the power of definition, which that's what the right brain does. Makes holistic definitions. The chachma of insight, ba'atzmos elokus, in the essence of God hamehava, which brings the creation into existence. V'koiche behipuche, and its power is expressed in the opposite. Yotze comes out limos b'chayav. A person dislikes his life, so it's not like that he unhappy doesn't understand. His whole life is like, my life is not meaningful. My life is not meaningful. Limos b'chayav. He has discussed in his life. He feels there's something missing. His life is not meaningful. L'chaya calls loss, and he doesn't take pleasure in anything in the world. Even spiritual levels. Immediately, like we say, who is in the heavens? I don't care about anything in the heaven and the earth. I just want the essence. V'lamayla gam mizeh. However, there's a third level, which is pleasure and deep happiness, not revealed happiness, deep. The ha'atzmis, which is in the essence, ba'atzmos elokus, in the essence of divinity, dafka. Specifically, in the essence of divinity, like it's going to happen when Mashiach comes, mamish, that people will take pleasure in the essence of God Himself in actuality, begili, and the essence will be revealed, which is something which is usually impossible. And we're going to see it appears in the opposite. It goes out. Kasher lo yachilu kli meichel lahachil, when his physical brain cannot hold it. Yifka, so the emotion will be a crying. He's giving an example, like somebody which is a trustworthy, loving friend. Benafshe, vafrade, when a person is separated from their deep friend that they really, really trust, like the story of David and Yonasan, the two good friends of King David and Yonasan, his brother-in-law. The avas nafshe ahavu, they loved each other in their soul. Kedeksiv, when they separated, Vinashku, they gave each other a kiss. V'yivkun, they both cried, and they would separate forever in this world at that time. Shiba mekach ribu ya'ava. Why did they cry? It's his best friend. That's because it was a deep love. Betainu gadol, they had a deep pleasure in their company. Shibi chudum v'divukum, when they came together spiritually, David was on the level of Malchus, and Yonasan was a level of Yesod. So they had what to contribute to each other because they were the vehicles of these spiritual levels. The Kahai Gavna and similar situations where a person has a deep, deep emotion. It's interesting that the entertainment industry, a lot of it is all about triggering emotion, triggering natural human emotion with the music and a certain situation, a scenario, a certain picture, picture, music. But that's not, over here we're learning that there's a whole aspect to humanity which people are not really tapping into. 7 billion people could be tapping into some really deep aspect of humanity that they have a potential for. Now we're going to go to let's go to seeing how this is applied, how we can actually practice this nowadays. Why is it so fundamental? Let's take a look at it. I'm gonna bring my safer, and I'm gonna look at ice test. So yeah, so here we have it. So far, what we've been speaking about in this mimer, the last mimer that we have so far from the Rebbe, is the idea that it uses the metaphor of when you squash a olive, oil comes out. So if a person experiences, the lesson from this is, if a person experiences, causes himself to experience this emotion of feeling crushed, this will trigger the essence, will trigger the oil, will trigger that the person's essence will be revealed. So this is a powerful emotional technique. Let's start reading from the beginning. We are analyzing the story of Purim, and it says that the Jewish people accepted what they originally intended to in the time of the giving of the Torah. Just that when they received the Torah, their evil inclination was temporarily taken away from them, and obviously they're going to do the right thing. So it was like sort of like without freedom of choice. So that's not a good thing. So they actually they accepted the Torah with freedom of choice when in the times of Purim. However, there was la'achrei. The Rebbe says it was after the miracle of Purim. They were not under pressure. So the Rebbe is saying that it's better, you will achieve more when you're not under pressure than you're under pressure. It's better to be not under pressure, because more can be achieved. Yesh Leimer, and he says, the Masha Kosa by Maimed, the Apirish Vikibel Yehudim es Ashechelu Lasus who Shivimea Hashverish Kibel Masha Echelu B'Matan Torah, Ugam Lifi Pashtet Aksuv Vikibel Achre Haya Achre Anes. He's saying that this is not a hidden explanation. This is really, if you read the verses of the story of Purim, you'll actually see that they accepted when the pressure is off. That's when they reached the higher level. So how can we replicate that and use that? That's the question. And according to this, so it turns out actually two things happen. Two things happen when they fully accepted the Torah out of freedom of choice. So the Hakabala shehaisa bisman agzeir ali de mesiras nefesh alehem first by Maimer. First of all, when they were under pressure and they were put in a position that if you give up your Judaism, you'll live. If you keep your Judaism, you will die. Nevertheless, nobody gave up their Judaism. They were willing to die. So that's that's a big commitment, right? The willingness to die. However, the Kabbalah however, when they really accepted the Torah was after the pressure was off and the miracles happened and they were not under danger anymore. That without pressure to accept, that is a higher level than the pressure of the willingness to give one's life. He says the similar idea is in this idea of squeezing an olive, which is a metaphor for experiencing being crushed. In other words, a self-imposed emotion that's triggered by oneself. Because when we're in this situation now, we're in exile for the entire world because divinity is not apparent. But we can reach the essence. There are two things. When the Israel feel that they are crushed because there's all of these decrees against the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs, or the decrees against people coming together, or decrees against schools, or decrees against right, Kamishai Bezman Amira Samara. There were decrees in the times when the previous Rebbe, this entire mimer discourse, which the Rebbe is saying is based on the previous Rebbe's discourse, which was said in a time of high pressure in communist Russia, the beginning of communist Russia. And the previous Rebbe was telling them that they're going to reach the essence by staying strong and making underground schools and underground synagogues and coming together in any way possible. You're going to reach the essence of divinity. However, there's another thing. Then there's another lesson in the idea of squashing a olive. Even when the Yidden are found in a time where they have abundance, abundance physically, and abundance spiritually. The only problem is that they're still in exile. Divinity is not revealed. Similar to the situation that was after the miracle of Purim, they lived in Persia and there was abundance. Just there wasn't any temple. There wasn't the revelation of the temple. They were able, they had light, they had happiness, it actually refers to 4 things. They had Era means Torah, Simcha, they were able to practice the Yomim Tovim, the holidays, the Sasen, Vikar, Bris Milah, and they were also able to practice Tefillin. The Pashtus Gam Beruchnius, and also spiritually, they had these abilities. Viseirim Mizeh, they had these opportunities. Viseirim Mizeh Shagam by Haman Nitan Esther. Also, there was a tremendous abundance from the fact that the evil man's wealth, who was the most wealthiest person in the world at the time, the most wealthiest person at that time was Haman, and his wealth was repatriated by Esther, and she was a better manager, and this wealth now wouldn't be used against anybody. Shahaya, see, he wanted to use his money to depopulate, right? That's what all this money was now under the control of Esther. So basically, the evil was totally transformed and now going to be used for the good. However, even in that abundance, they were still servants of Achashverosh, which is not the most ideal person. He wasn't really stable, and they didn't have the divinity. They were missing the spirituality of the temple.
Just to clarify, Achashverosh is referring, for those that might not be familiar, Achashverosh is the king of Persia at that time.
Yeah. Shehem shavurim v'nidachim. Nevertheless, even though they had the abundance, they were broken. Not that they didn't appreciate the abundance and the ability to practice, but they were broken v'nidachim and crushed. Kosis is like the crushing of an olive. Mizeh shem megalus, from the very fact that they are in a state of exile, a state of concealment. And through the crushed state of the Jewish people, from the fact that they are found in exile, Magim Lamar, from the self, from revealing that emotion, that reality, that they feel crushed, that itself brings out the other side, the essence of the soul, the happiness. Because on what they're missing, they can appreciate what they should have, and what they need to have. Now, from everything that we've been learning, we can really understand and relate to this, what we've been learning from the Mittler Rebbe. So now he's going to explain with more details, and on 3 levels.
Rabbi Shirk, we're at 9:04 right now. Wonder if we should continue this next week, because it's a long paragraph. Unless you want to give us a glimpse ahead and connect it with what we learned before. And Shar Yichud.
Okay, so I'll just say, without reading inside, the first level is that everybody really deeply down, because we have a divine soul, wants divinity to be revealed. And therefore, even if we have abundance, we still feel crushed from that fact that divinity is not revealed. The second level is, even if you have divinity revealed in your life, the very fact that this divinity is not revealed to 7 billion humans, it means that even the divinity that is revealed to you personally is not the essence of divinity. I'll say that again. Even if you have divinity in your life, the very fact that this divinity is not revealed to 7 billion humans, it means that even though the divinity you have is not the essence of divinity, you're missing something. That's the second level. And the third level is, and the third level was more, it's more difficult to attain, but the Tzemach Tzedek worked very hard that everybody should be able to attain it a little bit. This, that the essence of God is not revealed by you. One second, I'm just going to look inside, make sure I have this correct. Yeah. So the third level is like this, that the Alter Rebbe would do a verbalization, and he would say that I don't want the Garden of Eden that people go to after they live in this world, and I don't want your world to come. I want your essence. In other words, even valid spiritual levels like the world to come, so I don't want them. And by verbalizing it, he brought that out in him. And because the story was told to us, is that the idea was that he was not just bringing it out in himself, he was bringing it out in every person. That every person can connect, relate to this slightly, that they could deep down recognize that they won't be satisfied, not with the world, not with the Garden of Eden, not with the world to come, but only with the essence of God. And by feeling that one is missing something, is crushed, missing something, that itself is a trigger to become a vessel that the essence of God should be able to reveal himself to the person. And next week we're going to learn how we can. Next week we can learn how to, like, what do we do in a day-to-day life to be, because if it's nice to learn about it, but if it's nice to learn about it, but if we don't have a certain time and place where we practice something, then it's just a study. So we have to connect it with some actual daily practice, and we're going to learn about that next week.
Wonderful. We have a question over here. When we encounter an emotion, how do we determine its opposite? This was asked earlier, close to the beginning of this year, and I'm so I apologize to the person asking this. I didn't notice it at the time. So this is in the question of the discussion of the emotions and the opposite emotion. When we encounter an emotion, how do we determine its opposite? That's how do we determine its other side?
So, what we've been explaining is that, like, I brought the metaphor, you don't know how much you appreciated breathing till you're missing. Person doesn't. So when they have the pain of missing it, that's how much pleasure they have in 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 it in it being around. And I'll say people that experienced an encounter where their life was saved. One of the things that I noticed very much is they have this tremendous humility afterwards. Because they realize what's the most important thing in life. That's how that they triggered a very deep emotion. That pain, where they're about to lose their life, triggered in them the big pleasure, which triggered in them the deep humility to life, and now they just appreciate everything. Totally transformed. Or if a person doesn't have the ability to move a limb, and they realize, oh, how much this small little thing. If the person has a little pain in a toe or in a foot, and because of that they can't walk, and because of that the whole daily schedule doesn't work. And then you realize how much I appreciate my feet, and the person becomes humble, like, this is a gift. This is a gift. My feet are a gift. And now I can experience the pleasure and humility in having the ability to walk. So I hope that helps to answer the question, how these two, these are two sides of the same scale.
Okay, thank you very much.